bit.
No problem.
Decentralized there, but that's kind of the story. Been a merch guy my entire career, and esports was just the next chapter of sort of disruption that we love.
And it's awesome, man, because it's funny, we're aligned on many things. So my uncle had a big role in my life, and he's a blues musician and was one of the top 100 touring bands in the late 80s, early 90s. And I tell people all the time, Patrick, if you learn the music business, you can operate in any form of business on earth. Because you learn everything, and it's just amazing that you were able to connect with esports and being disruptive, like you're saying. I always, I'm 35, Patrick, so I always align esports being disruptive, just like hip hop was.
Yeah,
and
totally.
And we're at that moment now where it's huge, but it's still growing. I don't even think that we saw, the amount of growth it's going to have and impact, because, to be quite frank, everybody games. So you're at that moment. Go ahead.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, you've just identified another parallel. Look at the disruptive things that have happened in music. I mean, look how rhythm and blues disrupted music. In the I guess sort of came to a head in the 50s. It'd been percolating for years, right?
Since,
but late 40s, 50s, I guess, right? When it just changed everything. And then in the late 70s, hip hop changed everything again. And then I guess heavy metal and some of the less urban music changed it on the other side. But those are all things that are mainstays in our culture now, all of them. And so esports is, who cares if it's a game? It's a social phenomenon that's going to change things.
It is. So let's get into I know you have a merchandise background. What's the format for you? Not to give away too much of what you do, but when a G2 or any other Optic or anybody else comes along in those first initial meetings, I know you have to get a kind of feel for what they're about, what their brand is. Can you kind of walk us through that cookie cutter process, if you have one, and what does A to B look like as far as getting them started with their merchandise?
Yeah, it goes back to the different, slightly different tire, but on the same wheel metaphor, right? I mean, it's with every client we bring on, we spend a lot of time at the front end in creative meetings, and I bring in our commercial directors, which are ultimately responsible for sort of taking the product and distributing it outward to our markets and customers, and then our art department to sort of find that voice. There is a range in esports teams. I mean, the challenge with esports is that it's still very, obviously, I mean, people say this all the time, it's very much the Wild West, but even within that Wild West, there's different games tend to gravitate towards certain practices. So not every esport is like a top-down league where you have a very specific, aesthetic you might be going for within that league. On the other end of that is there's plenty of teams out there that operate less of a sports brand and more of a lifestyle brand. So FaZe Clan is an obvious one where they play competitive esports, but they've done a tremendous job creating a brand just around FaZe Clan that transcends esports. 100 Thieves, same way. But then there's other teams out there that just feel very traditional sports to me, and I appreciate those teams as well. And Complexity is a good example. And I hope they don't get mad at me for saying this, but to me, they've done an amazing job of saying we are what an esports emphasis on sports organization looks like. I mean, the way that they've aligned themselves with the Cowboys, and the way that they're creating they're sort of creating they're writing their way into that Cowboys legacy as an organization. I mean, I admire that as well. So, and there's a lot of people in between. So we just sort of need to determine, determine where someone slots in, and I think that esports, no matter what organization, which way you lean, either towards lifestyle or just more of a sports organization, I think there's room for both your sort of core performance products like the jerseys and the warm-ups and things like that. And there's also room for more casual / streetwear stuff, in each team. That mix is different from team to team. The way we approach it is different from team to team, but we try to create collections for all our teams that at least touch all bases, because it allows us to A, create a very diverse product line, and B, sort of hit all those price points and markets. Again, not reinventing the wheel, And there's a very specific way that you market and merchandise, sports merchandise and memorabilia. Yeah. So that's how we do it. There's a lot of planning, and then we go into the execution phase, and everything. It's pretty thrilling, man, to be part of inventing this and being early, because we're still very much in the phase where our big goal before coronavirus, our big goal for 2020 was to open up some retailers, and we've been talking to a bunch of major retailers, both here and in Europe, and a little bit tapped. The brakes have been tapped a little bit, but those conversations continue. But our first step really is to again, going back to just a pretty standard playbook, is you go demonstrate value in your brand by doing it yourself online. Every time a third party potential customer, like a retailer or an affiliate partner, the first thing they always ask within the first 2 minutes of a phone call or whatever is like, how you doing online and what's selling. So that's the first thing we do, is we start establishing their apparel and their brand online with a very simple, very standard, sort of white label team official store, and we just build from there. And that is starting to build into affiliate marketplace sales like Amazon or Walmart, of course. There's it's building into more, I would call, endemic retailers. Like ESL has always had a pretty big merchandising program where we're selling them product wholesale for them to redistribute through their channels, which of course are their online channels plus their events. There are a couple other third-party retailers out there that are starting to bring in product from us, mostly in Europe. Actually, we're a little bit ahead in Europe.
That's awesome.
And like I said, the next step will be to really establish that third-party retail market. And I'm not sure that even necessarily is brick and mortar, but it's certainly the trick is as you grow your business, right? I mean, your online store is very much that route to market that you create is that's your sweat equity. Those are your fans. Those are the people that you've engaged through social media, through being an organization, through just sort of building up your base and your community. We're as our job is to over the next couple of years is to push that out, and so we're depending on other people's routes to market. So if I remember to do when we get to Dick's Sporting Goods as an obvious example, we're not looking to sell to Team A's existing fan base. We're looking to Dick's to open up a new route to market for us with a new customer base. I mean, so
makes sense.
That's what we're working on, in simple terms. And there's a couple of us doing it out there, and my feeling now is the more the merrier. We're still in the everyone helps everyone phase. There's strength in numbers, and we'll see where it goes. But I'm very bullish on this, continuing to pick up steam over the next couple of years, and that this coronavirus thing is an interesting one, because it's sort of, I think, starting to show who's got strength and who might be a little bit weak. And it's interesting that some of the games that got a pop early on were like a Formula One or FIFA, which is showing that you have traditional fans just looking to replace with the
hunger for competition.
The esports version. So I think ultimately a lot of pain now, You know, I feel, you know, it's hard, man. I mean, it's hard for all of us. You know, it's
yeah.
I've been sitting on this exact couch every day for 6 weeks, and I got to tell you, man, it's starting to go a little bit stir crazy. But
it's
but, you know, I think
it's crazy.
Ultimately, we're gonna get through it.
Yeah, it's crazy being a creative person and like used to like nonstop, you know, creating and creating new avenues or, you know, whatever form of creation you're doing to just like almost halt and like you're saying, being on the sofa for months.
Yeah.
You know, and it was a blessing for me because I actually started this podcast maybe like 2 or 3 weeks right before COVID.
Right.
So it's been an outlet for me, man, just to network and talk to cool people like you within the space. And I got a few minutes left in the show. First, the first thing I wanted to ask you, you know, being on that track and being in that same, you know, that first esports stadium and seeing that event to now to like looking at that 5-year trajectory for We Are Nations, did you see it going this far? Or did you see it going further? And after you answer that, I'm just going to give you a few minutes to kind of plug away and let us know what's coming up next for We Are Nations and what you guys are working on.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me. You know, I don't know if we thought where it would go. I mean, I remember like the first 6 months everything was a 10, right? Since we didn't really know what was what, everything was a 10. So we just spent a lot of time just talking to different people and finding our way. And there was certainly some early missteps. I would say that the first teams we signed, I don't think we provided them a quality of service that we do now. And you know, that was us sort of getting up to speed. There's a lot of learning. I mean, the one thing that I will say is look, man, I mean, before we started this, it'd been almost 25 years doing music merchandising, and there was nothing about that business that I didn't sort of understand or you know, couldn't do in my sleep or wasn't conversant about it. But with Nations and the way we've set it up and the people we've brought in on our management team, you know, guys from traditional sports and guys from like lifestyle and brands, like I'm like no longer the smartest guy in the room, you know. And I'm learning a lot from these guys. And you know what? It's a hell of a lot more enjoyable. The last couple of years have been a lot more enjoyable than, you know, sort of...
The first 25.
You know, well, yeah, there's some good moments in those first 25. But, you know, I don't want to say that I've never not enjoyed my job. I've been lucky my entire career to, like, get up and like what I do, you know. But, you know, there's a new fire, maybe, that's been lit as a result of this, and I'm learning a lot more and dealing with a lot of people, and there's some great people in this business, and I've just been amazingly lucky to, you know, guys like Chris Cheney, who, if you haven't interviewed, you should. He's a great interview. He was one of our early investors, and both a mentor and a friend, and I've learned a lot from him, and we talk all the time. We're still scheming on things we can do together, and you know, some other people that we've brought in to help us raise funds and things like that. You know, things that we never have to do in the music side.
Right.
They've just learned a lot about a lot. You know, so so no, I don't know if we knew we would get, because I don't think we knew what it was. I mean, if we were thinking about where it would get, we were probably looking at it in terms of how many jerseys we could sell or how many web stores we might have after 4 years or whatever. And it's been so much more than that. It's been the people that we've met and the things we've learned and the new things we've got to try and business practices that we've been able to bring into this business that didn't necessarily apply to the music side. So we didn't know, right? And so no, I would say that the answer to that question is no idea. Even if I thought I did 5 years ago, 5 years later, guy says no, I didn't know what I had no idea.
That's awesome, man. Just pure will and dedication.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And then as far as plug-in stuff, we're just going, dude. Just going. Signing a bunch of teams. Still building those retail programs out for hopefully third and fourth quarter. We can start to get some placement. Working on another project that's unfortunately maybe 2 or 3 weeks early.